Poetry Center, bringing poetry to Paterson since 1980 at Passaic County Community College.
Reggie Gaines is a two-time Tony Award nominated playwright, Grammy Award nominated lyricist, has published 4 books of poems, is editor of the 2015 poetry anthology A Year in Ink, and scored the PBS documentary Senior Year. Recent projects include director of Connect the Lots, a musical theater summer camp in Camden, New Jersey in 2014. Director, creative writing, workshop facilitator of Through the Looking Glass Center Theater Group, Los Angeles, California, from 2014 through 2016, and director of Lyricist Fellowship Lab, teaching firm of American Charter School, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, in winter, spring 2017. I want to say about Reggie, I have to say one of my memories of Reggie is probably from, I don't want to make you sound old or anything, but since I'm not exactly 12, I guess I could say this. One of my memories of him, I went to Eastside High School, and Reggie did a workshop for us at Eastside High School. And I went to listen to him, and it's probably 30 years ago. And he's up there, and these kids are paying rapt attention to him. And he's going, pretend your eyes are a camera, a camera, a camera, a camera. I mean, he had that room so full of electricity and wonder that I thought, this is what poetry can do. This is how poetry brings us alive, and why I personally have dedicated my life to poetry, and why so many of you also have dedicated your lives to poetry. Poets and writers like this, like Reggie and like Daniel, really give us a reason to live and to go on, even in a time when things seem so desperately ugly. Let's welcome Reggie Gaines.
So this is for the participants in the workshop I did this morning. We were talking about dementia. I never said Alzheimer because that's kind of a difficult word, but we were talking about dementia today. How do you take dementia and use it in a poetry or writing workshop? But we did, right? We sure did. And so I'm going to dedicate this to all of you participants. Because I kind of did a little exercise where I would say some words from one of my poems. They would have to snatch a word that put a picture in their head and then write something about that specific picture. So now this is by Paul Beatty. I've also learned to start poetry readings and functions by giving homage to someone else. Because what normally happens, you get all hyped up and anxious because people introducing you saying you did this, you did that, and you're sitting back there like, oh shit, you know, like. And so to take the onus off of you, and it's just a physical thing because you get all nervous when people start hyping you, you know. And she means it too. And then you know when somebody means it, yeah, of course. And when somebody means it, you get even more nervous. So I've learned to take the onus off me by saying something by someone else that I love. So this is for the participants. So imagine if you had to snatch from this particular poem doing the exercise we were doing today. And this is by Paul Beatty, one of my poetry peers, who last year won the Booker Mann Prize in fiction. He's the first American in the history to win the Booker Mann Prize. But we were all, major thing. And we were all like in the poetry scene, open mic, Tony Medina, Miguel Algarin, it was Maggie Estep. So this is for the participants though, and it's called Verbal Mugging. And it's from Paul's book, Joker Jerker Deuce, Penguin Press. Remember, you guys had to snatch something from it. I'll do it slow so you can get all the subtle references. Why you, no rhythm, afraid of women, asexual, pseudo-intellectual, bald Mount Fuji-shaped head, no booty having, size 13 feet, pigeon-toed, crook-footed, Taco Bell burrito supreme eating, daydreaming, no jump shot, can't dunk, comic book reading, nutrition needing, knock-kneed, sap-sucker, non-driving, anti-fashion, constantly depressed, constantly no money, MF, take your weak-ass poems and go back to Los Angeles. Maria, did I leave my water back there on the seat? Yes, you did. Can you toss it? Toss it. Yeah. Tom Brady. They lost. I don't read poetry anymore. I stopped publishing, and I'm just so enamored that I could get up in front of people and just talk to you. I'm just like just flabbergasted by it all. And a poem can drip in here, but it's just it's such a responsibility, but it's such a fun thing. And without poetry, I would have never gotten to this point. Because when I started doing this, I didn't want to read poetry. I just wanted to get up and talk. But I had to go through the whole thing, get published, get a little notoriety. Then you get a little, then you can do whatever you want when you get up here, all right? But it's a wonderful thing if you can do poetry. And what is poetry? Here. Low IQ haiku, number 52, from Miles Davis. Ba ba da da, ba ba da ba da da, ba 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 da ba ba da 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 ba 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 da ba da ba 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 da da. Ba 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 ba. Don't need religion to have peace on earth, just a Miles solo with strings. Ba ba da da. Ba ba da ba da da. This is for, where's Laura? Laura said she loved this. So now, this is what, when you get a little notoriety and they could tell you, and people will say, hey, I like that poem of yours. Could you read that poem? That's what a gift that somebody would say, especially in the age of this, the brain dead rotation devices, which gives you the authority to not have to remember anything. This gives you the A-OK. You don't have to remember shit, all right? So if somebody says to you, oh, I love your poem, or I know your poem, and they're a poet or a cultural person, and you know that they're telling the truth, all right? So I'm going to read one for Laura, who said she loved my poem. And she said this when I read it, so then I went and sent her one with music on it, and she hit me today, and she's like, I really love that, all right? Dan said that he had a CD that I made in 1994. 94. And now we were talking about dementia. Can I remember this shit? That's the key. Can I remember these things? All right. 94. So the poem was probably 2 years written before it went on the CD. So 94, 90, 93, 92. Whoa. Everybody. I was watching a tennis match on television. John McEnroe was the commentator. Bill Clinton came into the booth. Bill Clinton said to John McEnroe, well, I really love tennis. And yeah, right. And he said, but everybody in America should learn to play tennis because you can play it until you're really old. Then he said, and the state of health care in this country is going to make it so inaffordable that you better do something to stay healthy and active. And I never forgot that. Now today I realize what I do is a lesson for everyone to work on their Alzheimer's and dementia. It's coming. It's coming for all of us, all right? Work on it now while you can. Learn 5 of your best friends' phone numbers and remember them. All right, something. All right, remember your credit card number. So you don't have to pull it out all the time. All right. Remember your, how many of you know your Social Security number by heart? Who was under 40 that's got their hand raised? Good for you. So let's practice, because the more we do it, the more it will become part of society. And it's not memorization, it's learning things by heart. All right? It's not memorization. That's got negative connotations attached to it. Laura. My introduction to neo-expressionism and graffiti-influenced modern art is in spring 1989 at the Tony Shafrazi Gallery in Soho. I'm with Carol Merengoff, mother of Todd Merengoff, the #2 ranked 16-year-old tennis player in the East. I teach Todd tactics and strategy behind his multi-million-dollar home on Old Westbury, Long Island. Get a call from Carol. Would I like to ride into the city, check out some galleries? This is a bit odd, but since I'm working with Todd later that day, I say okay. Maybe she wants me to lift something. We walk through the door of Shafrazi's. A woman gets up from this desk. Diamonds, Armani Piaget watch, pre-Botox face filled with sun. She and Carol swap multiple air kisses, then vanish into an office. On my left, not quite high as a basketball rim, but wide as the space between the foul lines, is this thing. I read the tag beside the canvas. Jean-Michel Basquiat. I know the proper pronunciation because he recently died and his name is everywhere. I actually seen him a couple of times in Washington Square Park, but didn't realize it until he was pointed out playing the role of the DJ in Blondie's Rapture video. Fab Five Freddy tells me everybody's fly, DJ spin, and I say my mind. I stand and stare at the painting, imagining it was done by some 5th grader high off a couple of bags of Skittles. Bright, bold, busy, it looks like a mutant cartoon. Far left, melted male figure, arm extended as if to hail a cab in red, gold, green, and gray. Above, disproportionately drawn airplane in black. Far right, yellow taxi cab on white background, below crossed out powder blue letters which spell the word bore. Center, childlike attempt at an ambulance, hearse, tow truck, and cop car which seems to be scribbled in green magic marker. Below right, gold crown with red outline on royal blue background nestled in a 3-sided black brushed box. He must be into jazz improvisation. I see solos all over the canvas. And though the term has not yet reached public consciousness, I get a sense he understands the fine art of sampling. I walk about the gallery, looking now for names, not art. Kruger, Clemente, Schnabel, Futura 2000, whose graffiti on canvas looks as if it's been lifted from the door of an uptown #4. None, not one, is as energetic or full with imagery as Basquiat's. I walk back, stand, stare. Carol comes from behind, taps me on the shoulder. I could have purchased Charles I 6 or 7 years ago for $9,000. Now it's worth $200. Could you take that to the car? I turned to see a rust-colored pot filled with tiny black images resembling the 7 dwarfs on crack. I know these images. A building, Broadway, Lafayette, Keith Haring. I pick up the pot, take it to the trunk of the Benz. Carol says no, in the back with the seatbelt on. Flying east on the LIE, I ask Carol what Keith costs. $18,000, but don't tell Paul. We arrive at the estate. I unload her Haring. Marble, metal, meticulous, silver, steel, asymmetrical stairs, and more than a dozen pieces of art on the wall of which I paid no attention whatever. I want to ask what it's cost, but figure it's rude. Are any of these people famous? Shirley Levine, Julian Schnabel, Andy Warhol, Gilbert and George, Willem de Kooning, Jackson Pollock, Jeff Koons, which looks like a Hoover vacuum cleaner encased in a plastic box. No, it is an appropriation of a found object which forces us to focus attention on America's growth as an industrial power. She really said that to me too. Finally, I ask what it's all worth. Carol gives me a series of Miles Davis silences, blows notes while leaving space for the listener to savor and or contemplate. Well, maybe 12 million? Time to pick up Todd. I grab a set of car keys off the eggshell white Formica kitchen countertop, take a final look at Pollock, and walk away while wondering, why is there no Basquiat on Paul and Carol's wall? And I take so much pride in that I can remember it. It's so busy, it's so full of imagery, but there's no connective tissue really, because it's a series of thought chunks. I'm learning to write in series of thought chunks. I've been away from linear for a very long time. It's very non-linear, but it's also just, it's everywhere. And so, because again of these, you have to learn to keep people on their toes. All right, there can't be these straight narratives anymore, and it's beautiful, but you got to keep people on their toes. Now I'm going to try to remember a poem that was kind of inspired by what I just wrote, because that poem came from me standing in front of a Basquiat painting at the Brooklyn Museum and taking notes, just taking notes. And then the exercise was, can I make that come to life orally or on a page? Which is impossible. It can't stand up to the painting, but the painting is called Untitled/Red Man, all right? But now, this poem was written based on that exercise. I hope I remember. It's called Riding with Death, which is the name of another Basquiat painting. Snatch, patch, tilt. A quilted layer of lavender dust brushed against the crusted morning dew. Beach blue balloons and cryptic caricatures disguised as skulls in Saturday morning cartoons. Tripping over crayon, acrylic, Liquitex, canvas wet with spray paint as St. Joe Louis frowns, a crazy cat-like kaleidoscopic crown plopped atop his processed dome. All alone, same old flashes of Leon Spink's Gap. Boombox blazing, Armani staining, scratching out an introspective mud club rap. Basement bohemian chained to the cane, stashed in the dungeon frying his brain. Colors so bold, looking so fly as life passes. Think same old ain't no burden. Hendrix was in the mix? Cold shaking coke, boiling hops. Rush hour crept, begged it to stop, and his heart burst. Guess you couldn't trust your muse to dance, paint, and ain't it a waste when one's so low, the bottom's 2 floors above? In love with love, the ideal, the dream, chance to glance at a windswept cream-colored kiss, this retrospective bliss the art world dare sing. And it's a good thing Pollock's last name wasn't Jackson, because abstract expressionism expresses itself in far more esoteric terms when one resides on the other side of the tracks. As I sift amidst a makeshift maze of scholars from Scarsdale, harlots from Spain, stark images in eggshell whites, names like Miro, Picasso, de Kooning, Monet, on this day meant to pray for a king. They sing sad songs so sullen, then saunter from frame to soapbox appropriations of Pouring Eyes and Valentines. of wine, cheese, gentrified creed, feeding on whispers, periods blue, of severed ears, years of excess, which turns my intestines a raspberry red. Sick of the talk, sick to the touch, sick of this sickness labeled genius by salacious sycophants who paint not nor enjoy the beauty of a midsummer sunset's golden brow. How are they able to dictate value of oil, paint, stick, acrylic ink, and I think of Jean-Michel? Vividly abstract, viciously scorned, whose ghost rides a skeletal hypodermic horse into never ever land, where I stand and stare, lights glaring from glass, succinctly wrapped round linen and ash, and beginning to wonder, why is our style labeled wild, and why are we surrounded by snakes? Taking a moment, I sit, reflect. What if Pollock's last name were King? Would he sing the praises of blessing supreme, have courage enough to withstand the beam of an officer's flashlight, blinding eyes weak, or blood from a nightstick, a concrete interpretation labeled pour and drip technique? As curators speak, I fear their noise. Defiance, decadence, upper crust, must trust my muse, its passion refrain, come to love unfamiliar names, Davy, Rascal, Kilolo, Suko, breathing artists who portray a world where original buckwheat yearns to be free, or as the natives rage, the tis that I thee. Can it be art if one cannot see how to play the game? And it's a shame Jean-Michel's last name wasn't Jackson, because abstract expressionism expresses itself in far more esoteric terms when one resides on the other side of the tracks. Oh shit, I remember. I remembered it. I don't play any instruments, but I'm a jazz musician. I don't play any instruments whatsoever, but I'm a jazz musician. And I've just gotten to the point where this allows me to improvise. But as great writers and painters and artists and cultural people, you ain't got no technical skills, you can't do that. You cannot be into improvisation without really solid technical skills. But it's fun to be able to just, because I didn't know what I was going to do today. I never do anymore, you know. Like, what am I going to do when I get there? And I was triggered by something that you said. And it just made me, I wrote a poem in my head. When you said it, it was just like, and this is for you. I just wrote this. It'll never go down on a piece of paper. This is dedicated to you. For something that I heard you say. And so my poem for Dan is this. I didn't realize we were poor until someone told me. That's for you. I did not realize we were poor until someone told me. So when you said that in your poem, I'm like, never even dawned on me. And my father was a detective, and we were an upper middle class black family, I guess, but there were 10 of us. Maria got 10 kids too. She's one of 10. But how do I remember that? Because I was supposed to. We're battling dementia and Alzheimer, all right, as a group. But anyway, I have 10 brothers and sisters, mother, father. We live in a house in Jersey City, New Jersey, but there's only 4 bedrooms. All right, so no matter what my father was, whatever, my mother was a homemaker, but whatever my father was making, it wasn't enough for all here. If there's 4 bedrooms and there's 12 of us residing in that house, that could be the projects. All right, that could be the projects. How many people? Here, do the math. How many people are sleeping with who in those 4 bedrooms? Out of the 12 of us. All right, something's going on. So, but on paper and on tax returns and W-9s, we were upper middle class. But there were plenty of times we didn't get, your stomach's grumbling. So everybody's reality is that. So when you said it, like, I got no business ever telling anybody, well, I was poor when I was growing up. Because I wasn't, because I didn't think I was. And yet there's plenty of times we went hungry. Plenty of times. But I never, ever thought that I was that. Never. And so it wasn't until I went to Trenchtown in Jamaica to do poetry literacy workshops, I understood what poor was, that I really understood it. Or I was in Ashkelon in Israel, and I realized I understood what poor was. So that's almost a metaphor for something else. Just the term poor, But when you said what you just said, okay, well, he understands it too.